Hi there, folks. Welcome all. Thank you for being here today. Welcome to your Thursday, and welcome to Crafting Your Equity Lens, Building Belonging, the New Normal. My name is Orion Bradshaw. I'm a longtime theater artist and educator. I'm also an Oregon State licensed classroom teacher. And I am with you today, helping to facilitate. And my equity journey began about 5 years ago by working with The Color of Now in Portland, and then under the guidance of Robin DiAngelo and Victoria Santos up at Seattle Repertory Theater. And then a couple of years ago, in particular, I started working very closely with Matthew Reynolds in this work. And I can't say enough about how his mentorship has enhanced my efficacy and autonomy within this vital ongoing dialogue. And strengthen my relationship with and my sense of responsibility to my communities. But you are here today to hear from Matthew. And Matthew Reynolds has over 35 years of experience as a performer and instructor in the theater arts and dance. Matthew helped create the Crater Renaissance Academy of Arts and Sciences in Southern Oregon, right out of his Master of Arts in Teaching program, no small feat. He then spent 12 years in the classroom, building up equity within his program and with his students, guided by the mission of creating community through the arts. Matthew is still actively advocating for equity within the spaces of education, higher learning, arts-based structures, and businesses. He looks forward to helping individuals craft their equity lens so that they can pursue their biggest, fullest, and brightest selves. Please join me right now in welcoming Matthew to the space. There he is.
Hey, how are you?
Matthew, welcome to your very own webinar.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Yeah.
Yes, and I want to say before we dive into the stuff, I want to say it's always very good to see you.
It's good to see you too, my friend. And it's good for Anders, our behind the scenes person, to be here as well and helping us get through it, all of these things as we move forward.
Thank you, Anders.
And yeah, thank you, Orion, for being here, and thank you for that warm welcome.
Yeah, I'm honored. I'm honored to be a part of all of it, my friend. Shall we kick things off by just discussing a few questions? I'll ask you some things and put your thoughts out there.
That sounds great.
Right, let's do it. So, Matthew, you've been doing this work a long time, as we know, and so why is the idea and the implementation of this equity lens front and center for you right now?
I think after being on this planet for 50 years now, there's a certain point as a BIPOC in the United States of America, so Black, Indigenous person of color in America, that you just want people to see a little more clearly that the system that's in place is founded on and continues to work on the ideas of white supremacy. It is what I consider a white supremacist, hierarchical, patriarchal, capitalistic system. And so that system, that lens, is our culture. And that's what people are looking through. And that's what we are continually looking through. And I think with all the distractions removed because of COVID and the pandemic that we're in, we've had an opportunity to really see, actually through some, once again, horrific situations with Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and Nina Pop, and the list goes on and on and on, that now people are really truly seeing that this white supremacist, hierarchical, patriarchal, capitalistic system just does not serve everybody and does not work. And so I've been called to this work sooner. I was called to this work, I feel, at the age of 3, the first time that I was called the N-word and really understood that I was different than everybody else. And the first fight that I got into that wasn't with my older siblings at that time. And so as I was in the classroom, I really started to listen actively to my students, to my colleagues, to the public school system. And I really started to see that equity did not exist there. And that the more that I allowed my students to have a sense of belonging in my classroom through the way that I structured that by creating community through the arts, by building community in my classrooms, and a sense of a place, because in theater, we get to be vulnerable anyway, right? We get to take these challenges on of actually being someone else in the sense of taking on their story and the feelings that they've
Mhm.
gone through. So I feel that theater already lends itself to helping our students build a sense of empathy and compassion, gives them an insight into situations and places in the world that they may not have been at yet or ever find themselves in. And that lends them to really starting to find their equity lens to begin with. And so I've just kind of taken all those things after leaving the school that I was at for 12 years and not necessarily on a positive note. I decided that this is where I needed to go. This is what I needed to be putting out there in the world, and it's become my purpose. And so, working with Trina Bolden Fields, she's been an amazing life coach and helping me pull everything together and pull all the pieces together. We find ourselves here today, this Thursday, chatting with each other.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Matthew. So my next question is, uh, I heard you use the word purpose just now.
Yes.
Strong word, right? And in past conversations that we've had, in particular about this equity lens that we're talking about, you've also referred to that as one's intention, which is also something that we deal with in the performing arts and in theater, right? Talking about what's the intention of this moment, right? So using those words, purpose, intention, why are those words, purpose and intention, so key to this work, this equity lens work, and equity work in general that you're talking about?
So I feel that there's been a lot of rhetoric, there's been a lot of lip service that EDI, equity, diversity, and inclusion have become these buzzwords, right? And on a certain level, they've allowed people to once again peek into what equity could possibly truly be, and yet it's still upholding this lens of white supremacy. It's not actually dismantling it at all. It's orbiting it, or it's still sitting lodged very deeply within that lens, and it doesn't actually create any kind of action that shifts and changes the culture that we have right now. Be it the culture of an arts-based structure, be it the culture of a school district, your classroom, of the United States. That's what I think we're really trying to get at, is that that system has worked its way through so many different intersectionalities that now we've got this big ball that just keeps rolling, and it's hard for us to like get off or get out of its way sometimes. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that it's really important for us to take our intention, take our purpose, take our equity lens, and do, and put it into action. And so I think the equity lens helps us to really see ways to create that action, see ways of other people around us who will help us with that will become accomplices with us, so that our intention and our purpose actually becomes action and we do something with it.
Great. So it sounds like, Matthew, and this is just a very short question. It sounds like one of your purposes with this work is trying to take thoughts that people might have about, I want to do something, and really giving them some actionable stuff to do,
Yes, for
right?
sure.
Bridging that gap between I really want to make change. I want to create change. I want to affect change. I want to be a change agent, but I have no clue what to do, what to
Yes.
do. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for that. Um, so along the way, what personal realizations have been core or vital to your discovery of the equity lens as a way to approach and implement this vital work? So yeah, what realizations have you had to go through?
Woo.
Sorry, I'm trying to
Don't be
keep them
sorry.
loaded right now, baby.
Don't be sorry. Don't be sorry. Because that's one of the things with this work, right? Is that it's work. And
Yep.
one of the things that I make sure that people understand is that it's intimate work, right? We can't, I don't have any magic fairy dust in my pockets, even though some people think I do, that I can sprinkle on you. And all of a sudden now you see very clearly and you have your equity lens and you understand, and it's this thing that you use. I've gone through it, right? I've gone through people not saying hello after working in the same building or working with them alongside them for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, in the school hallway. I've had people yell and scream things at me. I've had bomb threats. I've had all kinds of things within my life, right, as a openly gay Black male in this country, that have constantly asked me the question of, why are you here? If you've got all this around you that is telling you continually and constantly that you do not belong here, then why are you here? And so at one point in my life, I actually left the United States. I was seeking to become an patriot, sorry. Um, and so I had moved away. I spent about 2.5, 3 years away. Um, and there were some circumstances, personal circumstances, that brought me back to the United States. And yet, some of the realizations I made while I was away is that the tendrils of this lens reach very far. And part
Hmm.
of the reason they reach very far is through the ideas of colonization and how that has all happened. But we here in the United States are the only place where we actually enacted genocide on the peoples who were here. And then we took other people from their homeland and enslaved them and brought them here. And so I've got all that in my DNA. It bubbles to the surface in various ways throughout the course of waking up in the morning to going to bed at night. And so being told time and time again in these various ways that I don't belong here, being in my classroom, realizing that cognitively the brain at this teenage level, I worked with 9th through 12th graders, really desire a sense of belonging. And now I'm not talking about loyalty to something. That's completely different. Loyalty to me doesn't have anything to do with integrity. And we see that with our police these days, that they're all about loyalty, but they're not about integrity. And I think that it's important that we look at that. So I've got these students that want a sense of belonging. And so I asked, what do you need to feel like you belong here? Not things that you need to get rid of, because that's fitting in. Dr. Brene Brown has done tons of work on that, and I've read everything that she's put out there. And that has really helped me formulate this way of finding an equity lens. But this idea of belonging is super strong in the lens, and making sure that that's part of the focus that we have. Now, I can't tell people what their equity lens is. That is not what I do. I don't say, here is an equity lens, here's the verbiage for it, because that doesn't work either. As you heard me say, it's my lived experience, right?
Hmm.
I've taken into account what I've gone through in life, how I view life. I've looked at my own personal internalized racial oppressions. I've looked at the ideas of colonization that I've taken in, and I've looked at the ideas of segregation, assimilationist, and anti-racist, which I got from Ibram X. Kendi and Jason Reynolds' book Stamped. We look at those three definitions, and it's like, oh, when in my life have I been in those places so that I can have a sense of belonging? And it's like, I've never had a sense of belonging. I've always had to let something go, talk quieter, don't be loud, don't get angry, don't do this, don't do that, blah, blah, blah. All these things that I had to cut off of who I am so that I could fit in to that lens. And so I'm here to help people find their equity lens so that we can have a place to belong and not a place to fit in. Did that?
Great. So, yep. So belonging versus fitting in. I heard you mention that the equity lens is going to be different for everyone. So I think that's an important just kind of putting that in headlines and in a spotlight, that it's going to be different for everyone here, that your journey is going to look a little different and your lens is going to be unique to you, which I think is cool, because I think a lot of people are trying to find, like you said, that quick fix that sort of fixes everything, which is impossible, right? So knowing that the work is complex and everyday and also unique to the individual, that
And
helps me to know early on in this webinar here, right?
yes, well, and also, you bring up quick fix, and I think that that's what we've been doing over the years. But the quick fix isn't a fix. The quick fix is upholding this, is making sure that white supremacy and the hierarchical, patriarchal, capitalistic system continues to run. We've all heard it, that the system isn't broken. It's working exactly the way that it's supposed to be working, right? And so those quick fixes, the reason why they're quick fixes is because don't look at the man behind the curtain. That's the last thing you want to do, right? Don't go over there. Don't look at that, because everything will be revealed then. And so I feel that the equity lens in my work in getting to this point has taken the layers of that quick fixes, all those bandages, layer upon layer off, to really just like look at it. And that's why I think it's super intimate work, and that it's work. And I think a lot of times people are like, well, we're going to have this training, so let's just bring this person in. They're going to give us language and verbiage around implicit bias and privilege and white fragility and all those buzzwords, right? And it all becomes very cerebral. Very cerebral. And then a lot of times the trainers who come in are trying to make sure that, and walking on eggshells, so that it's safe for everyone, so that everybody feels comfortable. You're not going to feel comfortable. White supremacy is uncomfortable. The hierarchical, patriarchal, capitalistic system is uncomfortable. It is uncomfortable for so many of us. And so the equity lens, I think, helps us see that more, and helps people take the uncomfortableness and do something with it, and hopefully making a place of belonging.
Great. Okay. So then, knowing that it's individual work, there's obviously going to be challenges, right? But as you say, if the work does start from within with the self, as opposed to finger pointing, right? Saying that this person or these people are the problem, and taking yourself out of the equation, right? So if the work is really starting within the self, speak to your own experience, right? What changes or shifts have you chosen to make in your own life? And those can be really big shifts, or those can be very tiny everyday shifts. What shifts have you had to make in your own life in order to sort of navigate through the challenges that come with it, but also to approach the work with more intentionality, right? So again, the big question is, what changes or shifts have you found yourself having to make in your own journey within this work?
I think some of the biggest ones is being worthy, knowing that I am worthy of a world that I belong in and not have to fit into. And to be able to get to that place of worthiness, I've had to definitely swim through that world of internalized racial oppression. And I continue to do that one. I continue to look at those things. The conversations that we had prior to this webinar even happening, the what I call the shadow side, the dark side that says, no, you don't deserve that. You can't have that. You don't, all those things. No, to me. Those things come up, and you have to look at those things and really go, how much of my thinking is my thinking? How much of this has just been indoctrination into this idea, into this lens, so that every time I look at the world, I put this lens on, and I only see through that this rose-colored idea that white supremacy is grand and great. That's why the word supremacy is used there instead of dominant culture, right?
Yeah.
I think another big one that I've gone through is to really just, with all the love in my heart, set my boundaries and tell people no. you are upholding white supremacy with that word, with that statement, be it your mission statement or your vision statement for your corporation or business, with your decision on the way in which you choose to um, uh, punish students for, indiscretions, et cetera, et cetera. Portland School today, which I think is great. The superintendent of the school district up in Portland said that there will be no longer any police presence in any of the schools in the Portland area. I hope that he stands strong in that, because I don't think schools should be a place that you need police officers at all. And so, but that comes to that intersectionality, which I'll get into later, that
Mhm.
connects to so many other things. There's those band-aids again coming in of how we've covered stuff up that actually got us to the point where we thought that it was okay, as we look through this lens, that we put police into a high school or middle school or elementary school, right? I think another big one that I did is shift that I've had to make for myself is to really start talking and speaking to the dismantling of white supremacy, being
Mhm.
anti-racist, because
Mhm.
there's so much of it out there that it's, when I look at what's happening, how can I not talk to that, you know? And a lot of us are exhausted from it and super tired, because it's so entrenched and it's so combative with folks that we just get to this point where it's like, I can't say this one more time. Do I really have to go through this one more time? Here I am, and I've got to go through it one more time. But for me, at least, having this equity lens and being able to really focus on that and what that is for me, helps give me some strength to make it through some of those times. So those are some of the bigger shifts that I feel that I have felt in my life, and the value of all of that is, it's priceless. You know,
Mhm.
it truly is, to have a sense of belonging, to be able to feel that I am here, I am present, I am grounded. My voice can be what it is. I can bring my anger and my frustration and my sadness and my grief to everything, along with my joy and my happiness and my curiosity and my creativity and my crafting. I can bring all those aspects of myself, instead of just sitting at the table as the one lone black teacher, because now we fit a quota and we can check that box. And if someone comes at us and wants to be like, but you are upholding this, or you're being racist in this way, and people go, no, see, we've got a black teacher, he's right there, right? Smile and wave, right?
Mhm.
So let's
Mhm.
dismantle it. Let's work together and dismantle it and start building.
Right. So before we go on to this next phase here, I've heard you mention the terms segregationist, assimilationist,
Yes.
anti-racist, right?
Yep.
Which you got from the book Stamped. I'm a visual learner, right? And myself, and we were having a conversation yesterday that I thought was really helpful about patterns in this system that we're trying to dismantle, right? And you were throwing up the three fingers and saying, here are the three different sort of titles, knowing that there is sort of a spectrum of behavior that
Mm-hmm.
people have. But that was, I would love for you to just elaborate on that a little bit, so that as we kind of go more through this webinar, people have an idea of what the goal is, what the intention is, because, right, you've got three of those labels that are not the intention, that have been perpetuated, and you have the one that is the goal, that is the intention. And so I would love for you to sort of, yeah, elaborate on that visual as it pertains to the systems that a lot of us have been stuck in and still are stuck in.
Okay. So I have
Oh,
the book right here. And
perfect.
so what I'm going to do is, I'm actually, before I put my own words to it, I'm going to honor the person who wrote it. And so for those of you who don't know, Ibram X. Kendi had already written a book called Stamped, and Racism, Anti-Racism, and You. And it's not a history book, but it's a history book that takes us from like 1492 until 2015, 16 or so in there. And how he structures it. So Ibram X. Kendi then asked Jason Reynolds, who is a young adult writer, if he will make this more accessible, because Dr. Ibram X. Kendi is a scholar and he's academia, and he wrote in a way that made the original book definitely very heady and cerebral, and so he wanted it for everybody. And so Jason Reynolds took it and did some amazing stuff with it. I suggest reading this book to everybody. But I'll read you the passage that I'm referring to when I say segregationist, assimilationist, and anti-racist. Oh, and there are 3 words I want you to keep in mind. 3 words to describe the people we'll be exploring: segregationists, assimilationists, anti-racists. There are serious definitions to these things, but I'm going to give you mine. Segregationists are haters, like real haters. People who hate you for not being like them. Assimilationists are people who like you, but only with quotation marks, like you, meaning they like you because you are like them. And then there are anti-racists. They love you because you are like you. But it is important to note, life can rarely be wrapped into single word descriptions. It isn't neat and perfectly shaped. So sometimes, over the course of a lifetime and even over the course of a day, people can take on and act out ideas represented by more than one of these 3 identities. Can be both and. Just keep that in mind as we explore these folks. And actually, these aren't just the words we'll be using to describe the people in this book. They are also the words we'll be using to describe you and me, all of us. So again, Jason Reynolds, Ibram X. Kendi, stamped. What we were talking about yesterday is this idea, if I've got these 3, segregationist, assimilationist, anti-racist, they're not equally spaced out like this.
Right.
Assimilationist lives a lot closer over here with the segregationist. It does not live close to anti-racist. This is buying in. This is that one of those band-aids. This is that way of covering things up. This is that way of saying, oh, you know, if you only act like us, everything will be okay. And it's not okay for that to be the case. And woven in this big experiment that is the United States of America are these ideas of hope that this is a place where everybody can belong. It's on the Statue of Liberty. It's here and there in the wording of the Constitution. It's here and there in these sneaky little places, but alongside it are those white supremacist ideas as well. Mm-hmm. And if we are in this lens and looking through this lens, we don't see those things, especially as more and more things get covered to cover it up, right? We don't see these ideas. And this right here, this middle finger.
Coincidence?
This is where all lives matter hangs out. Because that's what every time I hear somebody say that, or I read it, or I even say it myself, all lives matter if you were just like me, if you acted like me, desired the same things as me, worked as hard as me, thought success was what it is in the same way that I do, etc., etc. And it's like, no. If you give me my equity lens and allow me to belong and bring my biggest and fullest and brightest self and allow me to thrive, just think where the United States of America, where humanity could go, what humanity could grow into. This idea is done. It serves no one. anymore. And we're seeing that right now.
Yeah, great. And we'll get to this later. I just want to highlight again another visual, being a visual learner, knowing that other visual learners are out there. This idea of this one sort of fist over here being the status quo lens, we'll call it. At least I'll call it that right now. The white supremacist, all those other titles that you gave. And this equity lens idea being this other hand over here that we're aiming for. And they are two different things. And again, I think we'll touch on that again later, but I do want to highlight that visual that you keep referring to.
Thank you.
So thank you for giving a visual for me and those other people out there that are like, but what does it look like, right? So let's jump to the next thing, right? You've been doing this work within arts and equity for 35 years. That's off, my friend. Squad goals, right? So you've collaborated with people from so many different lived experiences and walks of life, so many different populations of people, right? And you've really helped them move forward with their inner work. Some of these people I know, some of them I'm just going to go off of what I know from you, and I'm going to trust that they've been changed, okay? Anders, can we please show our guests today some testimonials from some of these individuals who have been affected by this work from Matthew? There we go. Okay, so this first one from Janelle Wilson. I have witnessed incredible changes throughout our whole community because of the work that he puts into the growth of every single person. He is a gift to everyone with whom he works. This next one, from Jared Good. Empowering students to make their voices heard, especially those that often feel silenced. He's inclusive, authentic conversations are foundational in Matthew's approach to education and leadership. And I'm going to go ahead and minimize Matthew here so I can read this whole thing. From Ray Netzel. A new level of respect. What a power it was to take in people as they are with respect and empathy at the same time. It was a deep, safe, and revealing afternoon for our staff and board. And like we said, that is but a taste, right? I mean, that is three testimonials in a giant sea, I'm sure, of testimonials, okay? Well, again, going off what I know of you.
Well, thank you. And I think one of the biggest testimonials is asking me questions right now, and that would be you, Mr. Orion.
Oh boy. Okay.
I've been asked recently, so I'm gonna take this out of left field because we didn't talk about this yesterday.
How dare you?
I've been asked if I've seen a lot of cisgender heterosexual white males doing this work. And I said, a lot, not necessarily, but I've had the honor of working with some folks who may use those things to qualify themselves. And so I was wondering if not only speaking to your journey to an equity lens and the value of an equity lens in your life, but if you could also put in there a little support for other cisgender heterosexual white males to come do this work.
Woo! Okay. It's one of those things where I've talked about it so much in the past couple of years, but it's never easy and it's always shifting, right? Just like this work is always shifting. We as individuals are always shifting. So I think my access point, one of them, specifically in my work with you, as well as other people whom I've met through you, is the idea of again, bridging that gap, transcending from white guilt to something else. Because I come from, again, using an I statement on my dad's side, I come from the first Pilgrims. I come from Robert E. Lee. I come from those people. And that's not hyperbole. That is actual lineage fact that my grandmother traced and all that stuff that I'm sure she was very proud of, right? Being from Texas. And so me sort of wearing that as a badge as a child and being really proud of that, because you learn that they're heroes, that they're revolutionaries in the textbooks in school. So yeah, of course I'm going to tout that. That's awesome. Yeah, dude, I'm special. And so as I've grown, and specifically grown in this work, that whole perspective has shifted and mutated for me of like, oh my God, and so, but white guilt, right? Guilt's that thing. It keeps us in a corner. It keeps us scared. It keeps us from moving forward. I'm guilty, so I'm going to sit in the dark and I'm just going to think about what I did. And there's no action, like you said. There's no forward movement. And so how do I break from that white guilt into something else? One thing that has come up for me the last couple of years is white responsibility. So if I come from this lineage, if I have perpetuated this system all of my life, albeit subconsciously for the most part, how do I make a change? I have a responsibility to make a change because I come from this dominant culture that you mentioned earlier. I am a cisgender white male. Right? And so I have benefited, again, perhaps invisibly, from this system all my life. So now what responsibility do I owe myself? Sure, but also my community, and specifically people who are in my circle and outside of my circle who come from traditionally marginalized populations, because I actually have a lot of those friends, right? And so the difference perhaps between me and some other people I've talked to is I actually have a very wide circle of friends who come from these marginalized populations. So I think about if they get gunned down in the street, or if a hate crime is perpetuated against them, how that's going to make me feel, how that's actually going to directly affect my life and my well-being. So there's a slightly selfish aspect to it. But if you take my friends and my family away, then, then the gloves come off, right? So there's a personal aspect to it that perhaps makes it a little easier for me to navigate it. But at the same time, if I hadn't done my work with you these last couple of years, with Robin et al., you know what I'm saying? I would not have, for me personally, what's been really important with this work is having vocabulary, is having words. Again, I am a performer. I am a storyteller. And so for me, the vernacular, the verbiage, the vocabulary, the words, the way to express myself verbally first and have that lead directly into deeds, into action in my community and remotely has been vital to my work. And I get so much of that vernacular, that vocabulary, that way to speak in one-on-one situations with family, painful, in groups. I can actually assert what I feel and put it into hopefully somewhat educated and eloquent language so that people from my sort of dominant culture listen. Oh, he's got words. He sounds like he knows what he's talking about. I'll listen. But those words have directly benefited me in being able to navigate what to do, because I'm seeing on social media and in my circles, that's the sticking point. I know I want to do something, but I don't have the right words. I don't have the right resources because the system doesn't want me to have them, right? The system has not wanted me to have those tools to really affect that proactive change. So what I want to say to you is thank you for giving me language. Thank you for giving me words. And that language for me translates, perhaps slowly, but surely, into action, into deeds, into intention. And I've been able to use that every day in tiny, tiny ways, sometimes in big ways. But most of the time, it is every day and it's very small. But if everybody had small, actionable things to do, times 1 million, times 2 million, think about what that could do for our nation and our people.
So 2 questions come to mind. Thank you very much for speaking your truth. Two things come to mind. Has it always been comfortable doing this work? And do you feel like you have lost something? Because I feel a lot of folks, there's this idea of power that we've been indoctrinated in, all of us.
Yeah.
And so do you feel that you've lost some sense of power by utilizing and working with your equity lens?
Yeah. The first question's easy. It's always uncomfortable. It's
Right on.
never comfortable. You know what I mean?
Right on. Yes.
Um,
Yes.
you know, that's an easy question, but it's that thing of nothing worth anything comes easy, right? I mean, that's it's a cliche rather because it's true. But also it's that thing of, as someone from the dominant culture who has been comfortable my whole life, of course, little things happen, life happens. We all experience trauma and conflict in different ways. But if, again, the people that we are really trying to establish belonging for, i.e., people who come from these oppressed and marginalized populations, well, they're uncomfortable every day. That's something that we are learning. And perhaps we should have learned sooner, but we're learning that. So you know what? If I'm going to be an ally or an advocate, I have to sit in the discomfort too. I can't be comfortable while you're uncomfortable and say that I'm helping, right?
Yes.
It's equity. It's equity, right? It's not equality.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm right. So if equity is that thing of giving according to need, and I have what I need, right? Sometimes I feel like I don't, right? That's just real talk. But if I realistically do, I do have what I need. So what can I give? What can I stand to give? And yes, so within that, there is loss. There is a loss of status sometimes. There is a loss of comfort sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the hardest things, I think, for specifically white allies and advocates to do when they have to speak up in a crowd or speak up to their coworkers. They're potentially losing status. They're losing comfort. They are sacrificing those things to create change, but to also bring up everyone else. I'm not talking about like make them more worth something, because they're already worth something, but they're trying to bring them up in the community so we all have what we need. So I have challenged some of my white peers, you know, in the past of like, what are you willing to sacrifice? And I don't mean that like, people think sacrifice, they think like all my money or my entire life. But it's that thing of, in these moments, these make or break moments where you have an opportunity to shift a paradigm, are you willing to lose a little bit of what has been given to you by the system to give that to this other person or these other people, so that we can all be there together? Because imagine what a great world that would be.
So then, are you really
Yeah.
sacrificing? Are you really sacrificing something then, or are you gaining the fact that folks who are seen beneath you are now standing next to you?
Oh yeah. Oh, there's infinite gain.
So how do we flip the script of
I know.
of sacrifice, right?
I know.
I
Yeah.
think, and it can happen through people's equity lens, but that's me.
I do.
I might be a little biased.
And I do think that. And you know what? Here, Matthew, I got something real quick, and then I do want to jump to other people's questions, right?
Okay.
Because we have these guests. But I do want to say a statement that I came up with talking about words and making them my own, taking what you've taught me, what other people have taught me, and making it my own. Because that's really that's where the real progress can happen. When you take ownership of your own work, as we've said, then you can really go into the world and see it with this new lens, because it's mine. It's not yours. I'm not trying to recreate exactly what Matthew does. It's impossible, right? But this statement that I came up with as we've been working together these last handful of weeks is this. And please, folks, bear with me here. It's short. I am creating a world which seeks to challenge westernized status quo narratives and dethrone its archaic ideologies and methodologies through a fierce love of humanity's infinite array of cultural assets, as well as a consistent radiating of compassion via listening first and an active holding of space for innumerable perspectives and life experiences. So it's that thing of, I have a bunch of verbs in there, man. You know, that's the world I come from, right? Creating, challenging, dethroning, right? Radiating, listening, all that stuff, you know? And so for me, the verbs are paramount to the work.
Yes.
So now I look at this thing and I have it in front of me and I say, oh man, I wrote it. So now I actually have to do it. It's my own challenge to myself. I have to do it now. D-O, I got to do it.
Do it.
Because ally is a verb, and I got that from you, right? I am an ally. I wear the badge, noun. But ally is also a verb.
Yes.
I ally myself with you. So now I work with you, for you, to do something for you, right? And so that's where a lot of that language has come into play, and a lot of that awareness and perspective shifting of, now I have verbs that I can employ, and I teach my theater students that, of what are your verbs, what are you doing? But now I can also talk to my colleagues, my peers, my circle, of what are your verbs, because I got my verbs, and you can have some of my verbs, please, but add some of your own. And that's where that real shift from sacrifice into true equitable, power is such a tricky word, but it's like, oh my gosh, I navigate through the world now with a different kind of power. It's a power for people, not just for me. And what am I going to get?
It's not an idea of power. It's not this idea of power.
Right.
You have found your power.
I'm finding it every day. It's transforming and shifting. And I'm still deathly afraid of making mistakes, bro. But I'm not paralyzed by it anymore. Like, even before this, my heart was beating so fast, and I'm like, do I turn my camera on? I'm like, I just don't want to screw up, right? It's ongoing. It's ongoing.
Yes.
Never easy.
Yes.
So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I have, and time is, if we're doing the construct of time is kind of short. But I do have a few questions I want to put out there for you from our community here. Okay. So I have someone saying that action is necessary in schools. Okay? And we've talked about that, the word action in schools. Can you speak to the challenges specifically in this, of challenges of action within the school? What can schools and institutions do to work on crafting their lens? So that final thing, what can schools and institutions do to work on crafting their lens?
To not come from a place of fear, bacon rebellion. Poor whites, poor blacks saw that they outnumbered those who had money and those who had enslaved them, so they talked. And it's partly where our police force comes from, that you could get a badge to bring runaway slaves home, because that's what the rich whites said to the poor whites, that they're not like those slaves. They're not animals and savages. They're not even human beings. You are. So we're going to give you a job. We allow ourselves in the education system to be run by a minute and small few. And I think that that's why more and more people are homeschooling. I think that's why more and more charter schools are popping up, that it's not just that the big wigs want to privatize education because knowledge is power. I don't think it's just that. I think it's because we as public school educators haven't stood up and said, enough. Enough. I'm not going to perpetuate white supremacy anymore. And we're going to teach all the story. We're not going to pick and choose, and we're not going to sugarcoat. We're going to teach all of it. And that's why there's been laws like SB 13 here in Oregon that was passed to make sure that Indigenous and First Nations peoples history is being taught in schools all the way through K through 12. And so why do I need a law to tell the truth? Doesn't that seem a little backwards? And then it's like, oh, you as an educator, you're supposed to sit in the middle of the road and be unbiased and not, but isn't it being biased to lie and give half truths and tell only the winner's story? It's the same thing. So I say, stand up and do, build something new. If we want to say that we're doing something new, right? And this is the old way of doing things, but we only move this far away. When the real trouble starts to hit the fan, what are we going to do? We're going to run back to the way that we used to solve the problems and how we did things.
Because fear, right?
Fear, total fear. Yeah. And not until we actually go, you know what? I'm going to build something brand new. I'm going to go way over here And so if problems do arise, we've got to come up with new solutions to those problems and solve those with a new way of looking at it. That's what I think in those instances that we need to do.
Great. So this and that ties right directly into kind of this next question. And I'm going to paraphrase it as a way of sort of linking the two. How does what you just talked about, the sort of actions that we can do and the ways that we can shift our thinking, how will that keep our kids, our students, safe in school so that we can avoid having policing, so that we can cut the risk of police who are there to protect actually hurting and traumatizing our kids? How does what you just talked about make the school environment safe enough, increase that safety factor so we don't have to police our kids anymore? It's right. I mean, it's right here, and I'm just tying two things together. I'm sorry.
No. The laughter is a nervous laughter in the sense that it's like, oh, this is why I'm not in the classroom anymore. This is what I stood up against. But the reason I left is because I started having nightmares. I started having nightmares that there would be a shooter that came to school, and I was watching my students be gunned down. And when the shooter finally got to me, they ran out of bullets. And they would drop their weapon and walk away, and I would look at all the dead bodies of my students. Because I let this get in. I let this get to me, right? If we create a place that students have a strong sense of belonging, then we are continually creating lifelong learners. Another buzzword that was thrown out there, but it's true. We feed our stomach, our brains need to be fed in the same way. Be it if I just am open to a conversation with someone who thinks different than me, that I have enough confidence within myself to have that conversation, that I have enough confidence in myself to actively listen to that other person, even when the conversation is difficult to listen to. And when I can speak my truth. And it's not about agreeing to disagree. Sometimes it's about standing up and saying, no, actually what you are saying and doing is harmful and hurtful to students, and it needs to stop. And that's what it comes down to. Being able to actually stand in that and say, here it is. We did it. Each one of my class periods would create a pledge every year. And we would talk about the history of the Pledge of Allegiance. How many of you out there know who wrote the Pledge of Allegiance? What year was it written? Why was it written? The one that we can also clearly say now, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. What iteration or what form of that is it? How many times was it rewritten, and when were things added to it, and why was it added to it? And why can we all say it? Indoctrination. Indoctrination into an idea that does not serve all. I hope I answered that question. Sorry for getting a little verklempt there.
I don't think you should apologize.
Thank you.
And I hope you answered it too, right? Because it wasn't directly from me, right? So I was interpreting it, and apologies if I did not interpret it correctly, right? And I think you've touched on some of these other questions in what you've already said. And I would love to ask you before we wrap this up. At this moment, knowing that it's ever shifting, ever changing, ever transforming, like we as humans are. What is your equity lens right now, Matthew? What is your equity lens, and what does it consist of? Because we've heard a little bit of mine, but this isn't my webinar. And it's that thing of action, giving words, and having autonomy, ownership of the thing, to help our guests here maybe start thinking in that way and going down that path perhaps with us, right? So what does your equity lens consist of, look like, sound like right now?
My equity lens, as you've heard, consists of some heavy sorrow and grief, sometimes uncontrollable tears, a fierce sense of being grounded and standing in my power, knowing that this is my purpose and moving forward. My equity lens continues to shift as I do this work, as I meet new people and have conversations with them. My core base one that I feel for me and my lived experiences is pretty encompassing of all the work I do is I create a world of love and compassion by spreading unconditional acceptance through love and compassion. And some may say, oh, it's redundant. But if I'm coming from a place of love, and love to me is the grand emotion, it encompasses all the other emotions within it, including care. If I can come to somebody who is cussing me out and saying all these things and causing all this stuff, and I can set my boundaries, still have love and compassion for them, still see their humanity, even though they can't see mine, then I've won. If it's a win-lose thing, right? So as we move forward, as I move forward with this work, I have created 3 modules, right? So through this pandemic and through everything that's been going on, through the ideas of capitalism and that folks may not be able to afford to fly me in to work with them, I've come up with something that I'm hoping to be able to do online. And so there's 3 modules to it: introspection, deeper connection through self-reflection, equity lens creation, and accountability. And so what I'm asking of folks right now is I need a beta group. I need a beta group out of this to see if some of the things that I may have a little question for about, does this come through in this world kind of thing, that normally being in the same room with people, instinctually feeling, I can feel and sense we need a break now. I can see everybody's face very clearly, or that intake of breath or whatever might be. Let's shake it out. Let's ground ourselves. Let's reach. Let's do some somatic work. Let's make sure that we're taking care of ourselves in that sense. I want to know, because it's such intimate work, if I can do that in this world. So I need you folks to be part of a beta group that I'm putting together. And so Anders right now is putting up my website in the chat for folks. If you'd like to go there, there's a link to it. So basically, the beta group is for you to begin creating a world in which everyone truly feels a sense of belonging. Your equity lens will engender a new language for you. It will help reveal to others the inequities in their world, and it will provide you with the tools to guide others to action. So this 3 module will help bolster you so that you, on your journey to accountability, authenticity, vulnerability, and respect for everyone in your community, will be able to walk away with more of that. And so there's 3 tiers of payment for that. What I also would ask from you, if you're part of the beta group, is a testimonial from you, so that I can make myself stronger in this work that is my purpose and that I am doing. I'm also writing a book, so you'll be if you're in the beta group, you'll be one of the first people to get that manuscript for free. And also I will consult and work with you for the rest of my life, as long as you would like to work with me, kind of thing. So that's what the beta group is all about. And I hope that some of you will take me up on this offer and be a part of that beta group. The beta group will be June 23rd through the 25th, 23rd, 24th, and 25th, Pacific Standard Time from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. It'll be 2 hours each day. I've tagged on an extra half hour on those meetings in case there's more conversation, there's deeper responses, there's things that we dig into, because we can't put time on this. This is over 200 years, over 400 years. This has been entrenched into humanity, and that healing isn't going to happen like that. But we can try really hard, and we can make sure that we're leaving 7 generations from now, hopefully just this equity lens. And then this will just be some history lesson.
Amen. Thank you, Matthew, very much for your time.
Thank you,
And,
Ryan.
and thanks to everyone for being with us today. This was really important.
And thank you, folks, for being here. Anders, thank you very much.
Thank you, Anders.
I hope that you all go away with a sense of intention. And I hope to work with you in helping you build your equity lens. Thank you so much.